attack the planet.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to another Wednesday TCM stream. How's everyone doing? Looks like, if I go over to the chat, we have John, good old John, as first today. Good afternoon. We have Alex as well. Nice to see everyone. Welcome, welcome. We're going to be doing some memory forensics or some memory analysis today, which is going to be pretty cool. We'll get to that shortly. Do a few questions, a little bit of Q&A before we jump in as usual. And yeah, see how it goes. It's going to be a chill stream today. Going to do, like I said, we're going to do a memory forensics challenge from the SOC 101 class. Munster, that's a place in Germany, right? They make good cheese there, I think, or beer. I don't know. I've heard that before. How's everyone doing? Yeah, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Got some first timers here. Nice to see. There was another one too. Let me try to find that. Yeah, we got some first timers here in chat. Welcome, everyone. Yeah, we do this every Wednesday. Anxious backdrop is getting better by the week. Yeah. I have some lights. Got the Pac-Man up there now. I have a CRT, a mini CRT that I thought would be cool if I could play the static, but the frame rate or the frame syncing, whatever it is, messes up with the camera, so it doesn't look that cool when it's on. Yeah, the Pac-Man is cool. Long time listener, first time caller. Yeah, welcome to the TCM radio show. Yeah, nice to see everyone in chat. How's everyone doing? Happy Wednesday. Just subbed not too long ago. Content is relevant and educational. Keep up the great work. Yeah, that's great to hear. Happy to have you in the academy. Could you please do one about generative AI in cybersecurity? Yeah, that's a good idea. I think we do have some videos around AI, and I think we have one coming up soon. So stay tuned on the channel for that. There's some cool stuff in the works. Do I spy a 3D printer? No, you don't. I'm wanting to get one because I have a lot of mini little things that I need to fix, and I know I can just print a little part here and there to improve things or fix things. So one day I'll add that to the capabilities. My class this morning was canceled. That sucks. Oh, I guess that makes it a great Wednesday. I used to have when I was in college, I had a comp sci class at 9 a.m. every Wednesday, and I slept through it every time. I think I made it to 2 classes the whole semester. And then, yeah, Hey, bro, I'm still in my license planning for a cybersecurity master's. I really want to learn some hacking defending stuff. Do you recommend me that? Yeah, I mean, um, whatever you're interested in, really. I mean, there's great courses all around for either hacking or penetration testing, or defensive stuff or security operations. That side of the coin as well. So, whatever you're interested in, right, would be my suggestion. Just try not to take in too much info at once, or try to learn too many things at once. Try to narrow down your scope if you can, to avoid getting overwhelmed. Should make a sock playlist on the channel step by step, please. I'm not sure what exactly you mean. We just put out last Monday, I think. Yeah, like a week ago, we put out like a third of the SOC 101 class, because we're going to be doing some updates there as well. So we put out like a free version of the actual class, right? It's like the first 10, 11, 12 hours around there. It's almost 12 hours. So I think that might be what you're looking for. So just check the YouTube channel for that. What do you suggest this college student to do to begin his cybersecurity career? I mean, it depends what you're studying, right? If you're studying computer science, or even like I know they have like cybersecurity specific programs these days. So, I mean, I would follow your syllabus there, and I'm sure you'll have electives in terms of different areas that you might want to go down if you want to go down like the penetration testing side, or again the sort of blue team side as well. There's many different fields and specialities that you can go down. So. Again, like I was saying before, try to narrow down an interest or a subject matter that you enjoy, whether that be security operations or digital forensics, or even just ethical hacking, right? Or being a penetration tester, or more advanced red team stuff, and just try to go down that path, right? I can't really give all encompassing advice for these scenarios, but there's certainly no shortage of resources out there. So um, just look around is my best advice. Selco, the SOC content is great, mate. Keep it up. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that. Hopefully, we'll have a advanced SOC course coming out shortly to sort of pair up with the 101 there. By the way, I love that you guys gave a third of the course for free. Yeah, appreciate that. That's one of my favorite things that we're able to do here is um, give back, and we have the free tier, and put out free content as much as we can. Of course, you got to pay the bills sometimes, but the more that we can do to make things more accessible. I mean, that's why I got in this industry. So that's what I enjoy that we get to do, of course. Red teaming is still on demand, right? Or in demand, I think you mean. Yeah, I mean, the market itself, like cybersecurity as an umbrella, is a little bit oversaturated at the moment. I think, at least for the past few years, it's been. But you know, um, you're always going to be able to find something if you keep at it. There's always going to be need for skilled people in any domain. It's just going to be a lot harder. There's going to be a lot more competition, right? And it's all regional dependent. I feel like I feel like I answer similar questions every week, but that's my general advice, right? Like it just depends on where you're located and the sort of market around you. But I've never done red teaming specifically, so I can't really speak to that. Does someone have a chance for a career in cybersecurity without a bachelor degree in computer science? Yeah, pretty much everyone I know in the industry does not have a bachelor in computer science. Again, it's location dependent in some cases, but um, I've never felt that there's an education requirement for anything and like related to IT or cybersecurity, right? There's so many people out there that don't even have certifications, right? It's everyone is different, right? Everyone has their own sort of way of breaking in. I didn't have a cert. specifically for security when I got my first like analyst role, but that was like years ago. So I know things are a lot more competitive now. It's a lot harder if you don't have at least something. But I had a lot of IT and sysadmin and network admin experience, right? So that a lot of that translates well over to security. And I had a hiring manager or a manager that believed in me and saw the passion there. And yeah, yeah, same kind of question here. Do I need certifications to get hired? Absolutely not. Um, yeah, like I was saying, I didn't have Security Plus even when I got my first role. So yeah, can't really. I don't. Again, it's hard to speak for how the market currently is. I know it's a lot more competitive now, so you got to do what you can, right? If you don't have certifications, maybe you pair that with education, or maybe you pair that with projects that you've created or worked on or contributed in the community, right? Maybe you have a blog, maybe you have a YouTube channel where you go over projects, right? So the the amount of things you can do to sort of beef up your potential is just legion at this point. After completing SOC 101 free 12 hours of content, what would be the next step? Can you provide a guideline? I mean, yeah, the logical step would be to continue the course if you have the means to, just because again, we barely scratched the surface just because it is such a long course. But if you can't, you can still look at the syllabus of the course, right? And look at what's covered, right? We go into endpoint security, do some incident response and forensics, a lot of threat intelligence, and working with the SIM, right, and working with logs. So jot those down, and um, you can definitely find resources out there. It might not be packaged nicely in a course, but you can definitely go hunting for education on that stuff if you don't have access to the academy, right? So I don't think there's ever a need for barriers there, but courses are really good at sort of bundling that together in a interactive way, right? There's a lot of challenges that we weren't able to cover in the free video, right? Like there's challenges within the course itself. There's like more class files and stuff like that. So obviously, not all of that is in just the first 10 hours there. Love you, man. Face turquoise covering eyes, eyes purple crying. I know those are like emojis or whatever, but I just thought that was funny how it ends up like that. Can I learn cybersecurity still now? Unfortunately, you can't. There was a cutoff back on April 1st, on April Fool's Day, where you can no longer learn cybersecurity. No, I'm just kidding. You can learn cybersecurity at any point in life, no matter what your age is, no matter what your background is. There's no barriers, especially these days. It's ridiculous how much content there is out there by different vendors, different providers. I don't ever think there's a a need to feel lost these days. Everything you can find out there. Good question from Mr. Bellini. What do you think about the report that came out that APTs are starting to use more obscure languages? Yeah, like Fortran or Brain FK to write malware, so it's hard to analyze. Have you come across this? Yeah, like honestly, and that's been a thing even in just like basic PowerShell obfuscation for years, right? So much so that even the most basic obfuscation still works in a lot of environments. So the fact that we're seeing more advanced methods is a little concerning, but it is still funny how simple some attacks can still be and still get by a majority of vendors out there. So um, yeah, and also if anyone's interested, the DFA report does a lot of coverage on that as well. They even did uh, the most recent report even had something interesting. This is not related to obfuscation really, but they had a command and control over Steam, like the actual Steam client, which I thought was very interesting. So I was able to recreate that on my end as well. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff out there that threat actors are doing. If you look at the M Trends report though, from Mandiant, a lot of same techniques that we've been seeing for years, almost decades, right? So there's one end of it where you're getting these really advanced attacks from specialized APTs or threat groups, and then people are still putting stuff in auto run entries, right? Or current user run entries, or just naming things, you know, uh, crss.exe, and then just placing it somewhere in the temp folder, right? So we might actually, yeah, we're probably going to look at that when we jump into the challenge from an actual malware sample, right? So um, there's a whole spectrum to the attacks we're seeing. CS could also mean cybersecurity. Yeah. Um, when I was in school, there weren't really cybersecurity degrees or diplomas out there. There might have been diplomas at like a college. I think the States has something similar, right? You have like a college and then a university. There's sort of you get a degree from a university and a diploma from a college. So I think we had quite a few cybersecurity diplomas even like 10 years ago. But now I know there's like even degrees. There's master's degrees, PhDs. So yeah, everyone's getting on the cybersecurity train at that academic level. Hey, Rubius. Does malware always come in cubes, or is that just the preferred shape? No, they always come in cubes. Yeah, it's just the way it's always been. Very low polygon, I guess. Can't quite get spheres. Yeah, we're gonna start the challenge soon. I'm still trying to catch up on the comments. Trying to scroll down here. Good question. In your personal opinion, do you think organizations benefit more from a defensive posture or an offensive posture to their security? Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I would say defensive, with the caveat that uh, it's kind of a prerequisite, right? You need to have that sort of traditional incident response, reactive kind of sort of facet in your security operations. And then you can start leveraging more proactive stuff, even what you're mentioning, like more so offensive kind of security, and trying to catch earlier or catch attackers or hunt attackers earlier in the kill chain, right? And that's more of a mature kind of organizational thing that you can sort of implement, right? But the caveat is you need to have that reactive response kind of thing in place. You need to have your data collection and your evidence collection and your centralized logging all set up and very strong before you can start to move into more threat hunting or proactive means to hunt threats before they sort of escalate, right? And a lot of that, if you look up the sort of hunting maturity model by David Bianco, he goes into a lot of detail on that as well, in terms of like what your sort of organization needs before you can move into, before you should start to think about moving into more of a hunting mindset. But a lot of it is, again, is sort of prerequisite, right? If you're collecting a lot of logs, you're collecting a lot of telemetry for your reactive response. A lot of that's going to bleed in nicely when you want to start integrating threat hunting for your team, and then sort of start investing in that, right? There's if your data visibility is already really good from your reactive stuff, you're getting a lot of alerts. You might have some pretty good telemetry that you can start going hunting into, right? You might not be focused more so on the alert side of things, like the actual, like an IDS alert telemetry, for example. But if you're collecting a lot of endpoint logs, a lot of networking logs, application logs, you'll have quite a bit for an experienced threat hunter to sort of dive through. Do you have any project recommendations that would be good to include on a resume for a SOC analyst role? Yeah, if you've ever worked with a SIM, right? If you ever stood up something like Splunk or even something like Security Onion, right? Or Waza. And if you've done sort of like some threat simulation, like attack simulation stuff with that and sort of analyzed telemetry coming in, that's like my go-to sort of recommendation for a project that you could do, like set up a fake network, right? Or virtual network, simulate some attacks, analyze the sort of logging, and then set up some detection rules, right? So almost doing that sort of hunting and then creating that automated detection based off of your findings, right? And so you could just pick some like an attack from MITRE, right? Just go through sort of the tactics, or just go through the kill chain, right, and look at specific techniques. Or you can even automate that with something like Atomic Red Team, right? Or even Caldera, I think, to sort of get some of that telemetry into your environment that you're collecting. So that would be like, as my like baseline suggestion. There's a ton of other stuff you could do as well, but that would sort of encompass a lot, specifically for that sort of tier one role as well, right? So sort of your main in the weeds kind of responsibilities. Um, Now, if you can start to integrate some of that telemetry or some of that, detection and response capabilities into something like, automated alerting, or something like automated enrichment, right? And sort of thinking more in like a security automation kind of way, more of like what a SOAR kind of thing would do. Um, that's another plus, right? So that shows that you're thinking beyond just sort of beyond the dashboard, right? You're thinking more so how all of this comes into play within a security operations center. And my DFIR, by the way, has some really good tutorials on that kind of thing, like where you actually walk through a project using just those things that I just described, right? And then you're integrating something like Tines or like some other technology stacks out there to handle some of that automation stuff as well. Does CCM have plans to introduce a threat hunter certification in their roadmap? I don't think so. Um, I imagine we'll do a threat hunting course, but I don't think we're going to pair that with a specific certification. I don't know. Maybe if the demand is there, I'm not sure. I don't really handle those kind of decisions. I just kind of um, make things based off of, you know, my expertise or experience. But the SOC 201 course is going to have a lot of threat hunting focus. But I imagine we still might want to have a dedicated threat hunting course where we can really dive into specific evidence sources and specific data manipulation techniques for those evidence sources, right? So doing things like aggregations and stacking, or least frequency analysis, stuff like that. Um, so I think that would be cool. Really have more of a data science sort of focus on a threat hunting course. I think would be kind of unique, kind of cool. Yeah, there you go. Copied someone's project and made it your own. That's the key, right? Don't just follow a tutorial, but if you can actually, go through a project and sort of manipulate it, or maybe change some parameters here and there, or change, for example, if you're simulating an attack, maybe try a different technique, right, or a different kind of attack, and still follow along the same process. So that shows that you really understand sort of what's happening under the hood, and you can sort of manipulate it to work with other scenarios, right? All right. Let us head back over to the challenge, and then maybe if we have some time before the top of the hour, we'll come back for some more Q&A and catch up. But with that, before I forget, let's get this guy going. So what we're going to do is, as the sort of title suggests, going to do some memory forensics, some memory analysis. And this is a challenge from the SOC 101 course. So, yeah, someone's mentioning we posted the first 10 hours of that course to YouTube for the community to enjoy. But in the later portions of that course, we actually get into the sort of digital forensics domain, and we start to work with a lot of forensic artifacts. We deep dive into things like prefetch and a ton of others. But we also have a memory forensics kind of component in that domain as well. And within that, we have some lessons on volatility and how to work with memory analysis and stuff like that. And then it all sort of caps off to this memory analysis challenge here that you can see. And so, if you do want to follow along, if you have the SOC 101 course in the academy, you feel free to. But basically, we get this memory capture file, right? This memory image, and then we sort of have this scenario here where nobody at the company can remember the details of the incident, right? So maybe peeking a bit behind the curtain here. And so now they need someone to investigate this memory capture for any suspicious activity, right? So we've sort of been handed a memory file, right, in a memory image, and now we need to sort of dust off our memory forensic skills to figure out what actually was going on. So with that, I already have the file here on the desktop. I should. Yeah, so we have the zip folder, and I just unzipped it to challenge.vmem. And as you can see here, I'm already in sort of a virtual Python environment where I have all of these sort of requirements set up for volatility, and then we can just run vol.py basically. And again, I'm not going to show the whole setup for that just because, it does take a little bit, but that's something we cover in the course as well, leading up to this sort of challenge in this section. So how should we start? Yeah, so we have some questions, right? I'm trying to remember because I obviously wrote this challenge for the course, but that was quite a bit ago. We did add this sort of thing after the course came out. I think back in December, maybe. I can't remember when we added on to the SOC 101 course for the first time. But this was one of the challenges, the newer challenges that we added in the sort of newer section. So I'm trying to remember what actually happened. But I think this was from, it was from a real piece of malware that just found on sort of a malware database, ran it in a sandbox, and grabbed the sort of memory artifacts from that, right, and created that memory image. So what we're looking at here is a real sample, right? So the first thing I like to do, and conveniently is going to answer our first question here, is get some of that metadata about this memory image and figure out where it came from, what system we're working with, what sort of version, stuff like that, when the capture was taken, all that stuff that, if we were looking at a PCAP, for example, for network-based analysis, we would want to know things like the packet count. We want to know when it was taken, right? The first and last packet and sort of the times between them. And so with that, what we can do is just run vol.py. So I'm just going to run Python 3. And then we just need to point to, again, that vol.py file, which I'm already in the sort of volatility location here. Again, I just cloned it from GitHub and then sort of installed all of the prerequisites or the requirements for it. And then we can just call vol.py in this virtual environment. And then I'm just going to give it the file of that challenge file, which I think is on the desktop, challenge.vmem. And then the first plugin, again, just for some of that enumeration kind of effort, it's going to be windows.info. And if you're used to running Volatility 2, so we're going to be running Vol 3 here, which is, in my opinion, a huge time saver in this kind of thing, but it also has some restrictions as well. And so even to this day, you might see folks running both Volatility 2 and 3 in sort of the same forensic workstation, because there are some plugins in Volatility 2 that haven't been ported over, or they haven't been ported over to the full degree that they were in Volatility 2. So there's some things missing here and there. But Volatility 3 does make it a lot easier to do things like enumerating the actual system that you're looking at, right? And so typically in Volatility 2, you might remember having to specify the actual symbol, like the symbol of the whatever system you're looking for. Volatility 3 can actually download these symbol files from Microsoft directly and sort of figure out what kind of operating system, what version that we're looking at. And the reason it has to do that is because there are different, memory is kind of, volatile, right? And so the actual structure of memory is not like file system forensics, right? It's not like file analysis. We don't just have these nice, easy to understand structures. We're dealing with things like the VAD tree. We're dealing with things like executive process blocks, process environment blocks, right? So it can be messy, and some of those locations can differ between different operating systems or different versions, right, of Windows. So that's why we need to sort of enumerate that stuff. But again, Volatility 3 really makes that easier for us, and we can just run windows.info. And it's sort of going to run through those symbols. You can see the specific one that it sort of used for this that we downloaded. And then from that, we're getting some nice enumeration information, right? And so we can see things like the system time, so when the capture was taken, which I believe is the first question asked here. Yep. So I'll paste that in. There we go. Whoops. Don't need Sublime Text. But we also get other information too, right? So we get the major and minor version, which we can sort of, if we wanted to, we can look this up and sort of see what version of Windows this sort of relates to. We can see the major version here is 10, so we're dealing with Windows 10 system, so that kind of thing, right? I think that's question 2. What is the major minor version the system set to? So I'll just grab that. And so again, we're really just trying to understand this memory capture that we're about to dive into, right? So we can see where the root of the drive is, right? So C:/Windows and a bunch of other interesting information about that memory capture and the underlying system. All right. So now we're getting into some process analysis, right? So what is the name of the processes that appear malicious or out of place, right? So typically that might be where we want to start with a memory capture, right? We might want to start looking at processes and enumerating the different parent-child relationships between those processes and understand what might be out of place or what is not intentional or not intended with the operating system, and try to uncover if there was anything suspicious running at the time of the capture, right? We can also sometimes cross-reference this with network-related information, right? Just like we would on a live system. So we can see, hey, what established connections were there at the time of the capture, right? Or, excuse me, or what were there any listening ports, stuff like that, right? And so just like we could on a standard Windows system, right? We can run something to enumerate processes, right? We can also run something like netstat to enumerate network connections. And so what it's going to do is basically go through those memory structures, volatility, because again, memory is sort of, volatility is not the only tool that can do this, right? We sort of have the structure of memory, and then we have a bunch of tools that we can use to sort of take a peek inside of that structure and pull out interesting things, right? And a lot of that uses something called the VAD tree, where it's sort of linking where processes sort of live in that memory structure, and it can enumerate things like different threads or different files or handles and stuff like that around that process. But if we just run something like pslist, it's going to, again, sort of enumerate all of those processes. You'll also see we have something like psscan instead of pslist, or we have something called netscan instead of netstat, which is just a different plugin that we can use with Volatility that's going to do more of a deeper dive into the memory structure and more so rely on kind of like signatures, I guess you could say, instead of just looking at where those processes or network connections were sort of documented in the memory structure. So I hope I'm not making zero sense here, but typically we'll have like a standard plugin like pslist, and then we'll have sort of a sibling plugin like psscan, which is going to do more of a deeper dive into that memory structure and might be able to pull things like unlinked processes, right? Or processes that have exited. And sometimes we can get, even just from a recent memory capture, we can find dead processes that have been exited weeks or even months ago, depending on how active the system is. And so there's two different sort of methodologies there. But in this case, I'm just going to run pslist. So let me clear that out. Windows.pslist, and that should just take a second. And we're going to sort of enumerate all of those sort of active processes at the time of capture. Really appreciate you going into the thought process of what you're doing and why. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. That's always my goal when I go through these challenges. All right, we could very easily just speed run this and just go question by question. I like to sort of think about things in context and sort of explain my process. Sometimes it helps me actually think on what to do next. And so with that, again, kind of like we're just enumerating the processes on a live system, right? Using a variety of tools, we get sort of a similar output here when we run pslist. So let me fix that. There we go. And so you're going to see at the top here, we're getting things like the process ID, the parent process, also the image file name, right? So what actual binary was running, the offset sort of in memory of where that was sort of located and enumerated from, and then things like the threads and the handles and a bunch of other interesting things like creation time, exit time, right? So a ton of different things just from this one plugin that we can identify. We can see a lot of standard Windows processes here, right? Like win init, client server runtime subsystem, right? SMSS. So a lot of like standard things that we could cross-reference if we wanted to. We can see in this case, the parent process ID is 4, which is the system process. So, that's looking a little okay for now, right? Not too suspicious. But as we scroll down, we're sort of going to go through that enumerated list and sort of figure out what other processors were running at the time. And we can sort of, again, cross-reference that to what parent spawned that, right? So you can see here we have msedge.exe. So in this case, the user was likely browsing something using Microsoft Edge, right, as a sort of web browser. So we have a lot of system processes, and now we're starting to get into the more user-level processes as well, right? So we have a couple of Microsoft Edge processes here. We have a bunch of service host. I'm sure we can find if we scroll through. And then interestingly, the last two here, because they were most likely the most recent processes or whatnot, but we have crss.exe. We have 2 of them. And it looks like this one, based on the parent process column, was spawned by the original. And this one here, we have 1560 as the parent process. Let me try to zoom in there. No, it's better if I don't. But we have 1560, right? And so we could try to figure out where this spawned from. And these are interesting to me because, again, there's 2 of them, and they have the same name. And it almost looks like csrss.exe, which is interesting, right? This could be just a piece of malware that is trying to sort of obfuscate or masquerade itself as maybe something that would sort of go by an analyst's first look through the data, right? Oftentimes, servicehost.exe, the most common malware name you'll find, again, for these sort of low-level attacks, because they work, right? Even to this day, just naming a piece of malware, servicehost.exe, putting it even in a temp directory or even just putting it in the Windows directory is a good way to get around some things, even to this day. But in this case, I'm a little suspicious about these. I want to figure out more. I want to figure more out about these 2 processes here. So what we can do with pslist is we can provide the PID command. And so we can just narrow down on a specific process based on, in this case, 5676. And we're not going to get any more information by doing this, but I just want to showcase that, if we are interested in a specific process or a few processes, we can list their process IDs here and sort of enumerate down just to those. And in doing that, we can change our pslist command here. And I just want to make sure I'm not cut off, so I'll clear out. We can change pslist here to pstree, which is, if you're familiar with any kind of Linux forensics or even just system administration and Linux in general, pstree is a great command to figure out what are the sort of relationships between parent processes and what they're spawning under them, right? And we can do the same thing here, even on a Windows image using Volatility, right? So what I'm going to do is just give it that process ID because I want to figure out what spawned that original crss.exe process, right? So just run that against specifically that guy. And the output is a little hard to follow in some cases, especially when you're zoomed in. But you can see we have these stars here. And it sort of shows us the directory level, I guess you could refer to as the actual process that was run, right? And so if we sort of, again, some of this just comes with looking at this kind of output over experience, right? But in this case, we can see service host, we can see win logon, user init, and then under that, you can see we have Explorer. And under that, we have our 2 crss.exe processes, right? And this one specifically was spawned by this one, which was spawned by explorer.exe. And so whatever this is, it seems likely that because Explorer was the parent process, perhaps this was a binary that was double-clicked, right, on the desktop or maybe in an Explorer window somewhere, right? So it wasn't something that was run from like a command prompt in this case. And so now that we know what the parent process is, we could start to dig into that too. But we also get some more info about when we run pstree, we get more info about the processes themselves. And so you can see there's a few more columns that we get, right? So we get command and we get path. So that's very interesting to us because we can see things like the parameters that were passed to a specific process when it started or a specific like binary. All right, so in the case of servicehost.exe, you might be familiar with, you need to have this sort of K parameter here that points to a service group. And if you don't, that's one of those indicators, right? Those low-hanging fruit indicators that something is off with a service host process, right? Just as an example. In this case, we can see there were no arguments passed to the crss.exe binaries, right? But we can see through this or through the path where it was actually run from, right? And so we can see in this case, C:/Windows/system, and that's where it was placed, which is interesting because we don't really see executables in that sort of parent folder like that, right? Perhaps in system32, right? We might see a lot of DLLs, maybe some executables, but that's sort of an anomaly here. What we could also do, if I can try to remember, if I go echo trace, no, that might not be it. Let me see if I can find that site. Oh, that's why it's echo trail. Yeah. If we go to search here, we can actually search for specific processes, which is really interesting, right? So for example, if I do csrss.exe, it's going to give us sort of this information on things like the prevalence score, which is really interesting, right? So it's going to tell us, what is the percentage of systems out there that actually have this process that's been like running, right? And so in this case, we have like 94% of the time. So that's a good indication that this is sort of a standard, maybe Windows process, right? We can see the top pass of where it typically runs from, right? So in this case, we have system32. So again, another indicator, if we were looking at a csrss.exe process and we paste this in here and say, hey, is this normal? Well, we might see, seems to be normal. But if it's running somewhere other than system32, well, that might be a little interesting, right? We can also see the top parents, right? So if we don't have smss.exe as the parent, again, another indicator here that something is off, right? We can see the children that it can spawn, right? So conhost, or the grandparents as well, which is interesting. And so, yeah, I just thought I would shout out Echo Trail. It can be very useful. If I do a search for crss.exe, we don't get any results, right? So a little curious there. We don't really have insight into how prevalent that process is. And so I'm going to go with that for the name of the processes that appear malicious. Again, we haven't really confirmed it, but we have some indicators here that make us want to do a deeper dive into that file, right? The parent process is a little suspicious, being Explorer. The name itself is a little suspicious, being too similar, in my opinion, to the actual client-server runtime subsystem process. And the parent is not the correct one, and the path is not something that you would typically see as well. And so again, this was not placed here on purpose, right? When I was creating the challenge, this was an actual malware sample, right? So this is what a real malware sample did. And you're going to find it also interesting, I think, when we get to some of the persistence mechanisms that it sort of implants as well. It's just sometimes interesting to see what malware is doing. And so there we go. We have that answer. Which legitimate process is it attempting to obfuscate as? Yeah, so I'm going to go csrs.exe. Again, if you're not familiar with some of those standard Windows processes, again, we cover pretty much all of them in the SOC 101 course. We have a few really deep dive lessons on standard Windows processes and what normal looks like, right? But there's also, I need to shout out this poster from SANS, the Hunt Evil poster. I'm not sure if I'll be able to open it up without an account. No, I can. Yeah, so if you just Google Hunt Evil from SANS, this is like the gold standard, but it doesn't want to load for some reason. It's very slow. But this is like the, in my opinion, best reference for what normal looks like on a system, right? And again, every system is going to be different, but we have some standard sort of Windows processes like system, smss.exe. Let me try to find, it's going to take forever to load. It's going to try to find the actual CSRSS. I'm sure it's somewhere there, but you can see things like, again, the parent process, what it should be. We can see the number of instances that should be sort of located in a live system or a memory dump, right? We can see what user count it should be running under and the start time, stuff like that, right? So this is a great reference, again, for some of that low-hanging fruit stuff. All right, so how many established network connections did the process have active at the time of capture? So again, I was saying, we can look at processes, we can look at network connections. Sometimes it's beneficial to, in my opinion, to start out with network connections to see, again, if there's any real low hanging fruit stuff. Maybe a binary is reaching back to a command and control server, or maybe it's currently in the process of downloading stage 2 of malware, right? A lot of this depends really on when the memory capture was taken to see if there's any active connections. But again, remember, we don't just have to run a plugin like netstat to enumerate some of that stuff from the memory structure. We can also run something like netscan, and it's going to go hunting for any perhaps long dead connections, right? So we might even be able to get some historic information as well. So that's what I always find interesting about memory, right? Because again, depending on the system, it's very volatile, right? So some of those artifacts might not get overwritten, again, depending on what kind of memory is allocated to which processes and whatnot. So sometimes you'll be surprised and you never really know what you're going to find unless you go looking for it, right? But in this case, I think this sample was pretty easy on us in the sense that we can just run something like netstat. If we run that, again, just like running netstat on Linux or on Windows, but fortunately, it's going to give us a ton of additional columns here that you would typically need to run something like netstat-anob, for example, to get things like the binaries, the port numbers and stuff like that. So some of this is being nicely enriched for us through this plugin. So you can see we get the memory offset, the sort of protocol, the source and destination, as well as the source and destination port, right? So we get IP and port there, which again, really useful for those network indicators. We can see the state, right? So whether it's an established connection, if it's SYN sent here, should be able to find some listening stuff as well, right? Yes, we see listening. And importantly, we get things like the process ID and the process that was running. Right, and so that's going to be really interesting to us. Looks like we have quite a few active network connections or established network connections with this crss.exe process, right? So again, very interesting. If we started off doing some of that network analysis, we probably would have found our answer much sooner, right? But again, we want to be thorough and sort of cross-reference things when we can. And sometimes you'll get lucky. Sometimes you need to do some more digging to find what you're looking for, right? So in this case, it wants to know how many how many established connections there are specifically for that process, right? And there's a few different ways we can narrow that down. We could, of course, just count them, right? But I like to use technology when I can. And so what I could do here, we could have piped that output over to a file and sort of manipulated that. But it doesn't take too long in this case to run the plugin each time. So what I'm going to do is just grep out for that crss.exe, or I'll just do CRSS. And then I'll grep out for established. And it should just narrow down those results to what we're looking for. There we go. So it looks like we just have 3, right? We can see the source. In this case, this was the sort of compromised system, this internal IP address of 192.168.1.15. Looks like we have this interesting, perhaps 2 in this case. The output is a little weird here, but it looks like we have 2 of these IPs that it was being actively connected to. Again, perhaps to provide remote access, right? Or perhaps to download a second stage of the payload. Who really knows, right? We could sort of dive in deeper if we wanted to and figure that out. We could also, take these IP addresses and perform our usual triage kind of things, right? Like look up its reputation, see perhaps what, if any, domains were associated with it, that kind of thing, right? Even just a simple virus total look up. We should find some red, I imagine, against that IP address. We'll see. No, maybe not. I guess it was perhaps reallocated since, and then you won't get some. I'm not sure if it was. I can't remember when I grabbed this sample from, but it would have been within the last year, I imagine. Oh yeah, there we go. So 2024, 1029. So in that case, I imagine the IP address was reallocated, no longer appearing as malicious, right? But again, It all depends on the context. But in this case, we have 3 established connections for that specific process, right? So that should be our answer there. And then using the process ID identified in the previous question, right? So that 3076. What is the name of its parent process? Well, we actually already figured that out, right? Another way we could do that, again, just being verbose here, Windows PS list, and then we can provide PID of 3076. And that should just narrow down to that process. And we can grab the parent process ID, paste that in as well. Again, we already did this using PS tree, which was a lot faster and easier. But again, we could also just start climbing up that tree manually. And so if we grab this one, I think this should be the Explorer process, right? There we go. Yeah, so we get explorer.exe. What is the full system path of the malicious process executable? Again, we figured that out from PS tree, right? So let me PS tree and then give it that process ID as well. And then just grab that. It was in the Windows system directory. So let's find that. C Windows system, crss.exe. There we go. Oops, wrong question. There we go. All right, so what are the SHA-256 hash values of both malicious process executables? So now we can demonstrate another interesting or very useful thing that we can do with Volatility. We can actually extract out data from a memory capture, right? So in this case, we can pull out this literal binary, right? And then do some analysis on it, right? In some cases, the hash won't match exactly because things can sort of open up more once they're in memory, and it can affect that kind of thing. But in this case, just as sort of the practice, can we grab sort of the hash, or can we grab the file out of memory and actually work with it? Even just run something like strings against it, or perform dynamic analysis. Right? There's a ton that we can do once we have access to the sample. But how do we get that sample out of the memory? Right? So fortunately, it's pretty easy with some of these plugins that we have. And so what I'm going to do, you just go back up here. And in this case, we can do this straight from the PS list command. So I'm just going to provide TAC H there for the help options because I don't always remember the arguments that we can add. I saw a question here just come by. Never heard of Malware Cube. Is this like a THM for malware analysis? No, this is from the SOC 101 course. This is one of the memory forensics challenges that we have in the course, and I'm just running through it in a more sort of verbose way, investigative kind of way. We're almost done, actually. We have 2 questions left. So now what we're going to do, as you can see, if we run PS list in Volatility, again, we can provide a process ID, which we've been doing to sort of narrow that down. And we can also run --dump here to extract those processes out of memory and write them to disk, which is super cool, right? And so what we can do is grab those. I always do that. I clear my screen when I have what I need. So let me run PS tree again. I need to grab those process IDs again of those 2 malicious processes. So it's going to be 3076. And then the other one, is that it? Yeah, 5676. Cool. I'm going to paste those in there and then run this command again. And I think that's going to cut me off. So I'm going to clear, paste that in. There we go. So PS list, and then we can say, hey, I just want to grab these process IDs, and I also want to dump out their contents, right? And that's just going to write it to our current directory, right? So in this volatility folder, which is not ideal, right? So we can, I know there's an argument we can add to change that output directory. I think it's just TAC O. But the syntax of volatility is kind of annoying, right? If you put any other arguments after you put the file, it'll sometimes yell at you. And I don't want to look like an idiot here on stream. So I'm just gonna leave it in the current directory, and then we can move them if we need to. But that should just take a second. And you can see that, again, it's just giving us sort of this enumeration information about those processes. But you can see we have a file output column here, and it's telling us the name of the dump file that was created. right? And so it names it nicely for us. We have the process ID and then the process name and then the memory address location of that as well. So what I can do, just run something like file against one of those. And interestingly, it is in fact a portable executable file. Same kind of deal with this one as well. Yep. And then what we can do to just get those hash values, right? We can run something like MD5 sum or SHA-1 sum, but commonly SHA-256 sum against any of those. I'll just say .dmp files that we pulled out, right? And we get two different hash values. Again, sometimes because memory is very volatile, and when a process starts up, it sometimes has different libraries it imports, or it sort of opens up more. It's the sort of analogy I like to think of. And so we're not always going to get like a hard-coded hash value of a specific file, but it can be a way for us to fingerprint the specific executable that we dumped out, right? So it might not match what was originally on the system, which is kind of an interesting caveat there. But I'll just grab those, paste them in, and then submit. And just because I'm curious, we can try to virus total these as well. See if we get anything. Yeah, so we get one hit there. That's not enough for me to definitively say that something is malicious. But let's try that one. Yeah, same kind of thing. It does appear to be some sort of dropper file, which kind of is in line with what we were seeing from the network connections as well, right? And so what we could do is do more of a detailed analysis on those files, right? We could do some static or dynamic analysis or try to reverse them, right? But we don't have all day here, so we'll just stick with that. But we can specifically think to some of the later stages of the attack chain now and think about the maybe persistence that was run after this was executed, right? And so what was the name of the persistent run entry set by the malware? And the sort of key to this question is the fact that we can query, actual registry keys from memory, which is, again, something super interesting that we can do because memory is sort of, it contains a lot of this registry information as well, right? And so what we can do here in Volatility is, let me go back. Instead of PS list, we have access to windows.registry as a sort of plugin. And under that, we have, we can do a lot of things, right? We can actually dump registry hives and then sort of, load them up into something like Registry Explorer and start working with those. Or we can also just print out a specific value. And in this case, to make our lives easier, I'm just going to do that. And then we can just provide, key as its own argument, which is, hey, what key do I want to extract from memory or enumerate through? And then we can also recurse through keys as well. But in this case, I'm just going to start going through some of those common, again, that low-hanging fruit that malware authors and malware in general still likes to use for installing persistence, right? It's been decades, right? And we're still seeing things in auto-run entries or in some of those, again, those low-hanging sort of malware 101, hacker 101 locations, right? And again, this is a real sample just from a few months ago, right? So this is still this is still happening. And so what I'm going to do here, sometimes the syntax can be a little weird because it can sort of enumerate through different hives, I guess you could say, right? So different HKLM, HKCU, stuff like that. And so in this case, I'm just going to say, hey, I want to grab software. I'll just try the, I can't remember what exactly it's under, but I'm going to try some of those current version run or those also machine ones as well. So I'll try the user hive first. So Microsoft Windows, can remember current version. And then under the run key, we also have, again, the run once key that we could check as well and sort of enumerate through those. But again, this is typically what you'll see most likely, again, in these sort of low-hanging fruit kind of scenarios, because this registry key is going to say, hey, run whatever is sort of listed here every time a current user or the machine sort of logs on, right? Depending on if it's under the ntuser.dat or if it's under the sort of local machine hive as well, right? So in this case, the output is really messy. And so again, sometimes this is just going to take a little bit of enumeration and sort of going through what we're looking at. In theory, I would typically just zoom out here a bit to make it a bit easier to read, or pipe it over to an actual file and start looking through. right? But in this case, as we sort of scroll through, we see some references. In this case, we have Amcache Hive. We see some references to Mark Anderson as a potential user here, right? In this case, under current version run, it looks like we have Microsoft Edge auto launch, right? So very interestingly named sort of entry here. And we can see, hey, what program or what binary or command is being run every time this user logs in. In this case, it looks to be Microsoft Edge.exe, and it's starting up a session, right? So this appears to be kind of legitimate. It's from the legitimate program files, Microsoft Edge. So I'm not too suspicious about that. But the one directly under that, no, that's a OneDrive one. There was another one I saw. Yeah, so again, under this Mark Anderson sort of location, under ntuser.dat, so there his specific, current user registry hive. Under that run entry, we have this weird string here. Let me zoom in. Very interesting string. So that's the actual name of this entry. And then under the path of what's going to be run, it's calling that crss.exe binary once again. Right. So there's our sort of smoking gun indicator that something is definitely off here. We have a very weirdly named auto run entry, right? This weird string here. And it's pointing to that suspicious binary that we already saw, right? And so in this case, this appears to be our name here. And there we go. And so that is it for this guy, right? We enumerated through, again, these sort of system information or the memory capture information, the operating system. And then we started to look at processes and started to break down some network connections as well and sort of map those, correlated those to the suspicious process, right? We were able to find the actual executable that was running, the location, and then we were able to dump that out and figure out its hash values, right? And then we even got to look at some persistence that was installed from this piece of malware as well. And so really sort of going up that attack chain there and sort of retracing that. Forensics is really interesting because we can kind of go back in time, right? If we identify something like a persistent run entry first, maybe if we're doing some sort of threat hunting, well, we can use forensics to go back in time and figure out what are those other indicators, right? If this was sort of the persistent step, well, what was maybe execution, right? Or the initial access, how did the attacker get on the system? What binary was related? And use this run entry as a pivot point to sort of go back in time and say, hey, well, this process was running. And hey, there was a active network connection for that process, right? So that kind of thing. Reverse engineering, on the other hand, is what kind of allows us to go forward in time, right? So for example, if we identify a dropper file earlier in the process or in the attack chain, we can maybe reverse that a little bit and figure out, hey, what is the second stage going to call out to? Or, what network artifacts are going to be accessed, right? So that kind of thing. Or what persistence mechanisms might be installed. So I kind of think of it, again, going back in time or forward in time, depending on what we're looking at. And so that's it, right? Let me try to find, I know I had it listed here somewhere. I had an AnyRun link for that actual sample that we just looked at, sort of a dynamic analysis of that piece of malware, and maybe try to figure out what other artifacts we can find. I don't know if I can grab the actual... No, I don't know if I can grab the actual report from that, or maybe text report. Yeah, let me try this. Because there was something very interesting about that persistent run entry name and sort of how that was abstracted a little bit in Volatility, which I think is a really interesting point. So that's why I'm sort of going off on this tangent here. And so here's the report from that actual piece of malware we just looked at. Basically just sandboxed it myself as well and then dumped out a memory image. But again, if we look through this, we're going to see all of these similar indicators that we identified. We're going to see some of those process and network indicators. But let me try to find persistence here. I know it's somewhere. It's got to be somewhere in these reports. Oh, maybe if we just look at registry activity. Yeah. Okay. So here it is. Yeah. So if we look at modification events, so, as this executable is running, was anything in the registry maybe changed or added to or modified? And in this case, again, exactly what we identified under current version, under the run key. This is the name of that malicious persistence mechanism that we identified, right? You'll notice it's in Cyrillic writing, and that's not what we saw in no, that's not what we saw wherever it was in here, right? Right here. So let me just clear that out, paste that. Right, so we sort of have a little bit of abstraction there because it wasn't able to sort of write out those characters, right? So I just thought that was interesting to point out. This could even perhaps help us pinpoint or maybe attribute this piece of malware to a certain location, right? Or maybe a certain kind of a group, right? If they're using sort of this Cyrillic language in some of their artifacts, right? So again, just thought that was an interesting little tidbit there. But that was it. That was a challenge. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And let's return to some Q&A before we wrap up for the day. So let me flip that back. There we go. All right. Quite a few pinned questions. Give me a second here to catch up. Do you know where to study it in some countries, and is it worth to take the time, take the risk, and move? For cybersecurity, how long to learn from zero? A few questions there. I mean, it can be worth the risk to move. You got to be careful moving for a specific job or even just the opportunity of a job, right? So, fortunately, I've never really done that. I've kind of been remote for the majority of my career, actually, even like before sort of COVID times and before that sort of shift. And so, I would prioritize maybe getting a remote position before you actually dive in and move around the country. But I know it's worked out for some people, right? So, yeah, can't really give a personal anecdote on that. Um, I am pursuing BTech. Not sure what that is. Maybe a bachelor's, uh, bachelor's of technology. Is that a thing? In cybersecurity, but I'm not getting practical knowledge. Any tips? Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of the unfortunate reality in some cases. Um, uh, that was sort of my qualms with a lot of my academic experience as well, which wasn't in cyber by any means, but again, sort of the same kind of deal where you're not getting practical knowledge; it's more theoretical, which I think is still a good thing. Ideally, I know the sort of thing is to say, practical first. Everything has to be practical. I think there's some benefits in having a mix of both. And the way I like to sort of go through courses and the way I like to structure courses too is sort of give that high level theoretical kind of knowledge. And then sort of dive into to practical portions as well, right? So, for example, if you're doing memory forensics, breaking down what sort of the memory structure looks like, and then going into actually working with it through different tools, right? And so for your specific question, again, all over the place, you can get practical skills. Try Hack Me, a lot of free stuff, free labs there, right? But even just a good practical course, there's no shortage of them these days. Just depends on, what specific area that you want to go into, right? If it's blue team stuff, again, we just went through a practical example on sort of digital or memory forensics there, right? So there's no shortage of practical challenges and lessons in the SOC 101 course with TCM. But again, try Hack Me's free. You can do a lot of Hack the Box Sherlocks. I think they have some of their Academy lessons free. I'm not sure. I think you get some free cubes or something like that. Sorry, I'm not too familiar with the Hack the Box Academy, but it is extremely high quality stuff as well. So, yeah, again, there's no shortage. Blue Team Labs online, right? And they also have the sort of Blue Team Level 1 course, but they also have some free courses too. So, Security Blue Team as well is something you could look at. Oh, cool question here. Is manual forensics will still be valid in the future? As you can see, EDR, XDR, and security controllers taking over. Yeah, that's a good point. That's, in my opinion, one of the huge benefits of something like an EDR is it actually has the ability, in some cases, to um, uh, sort of attach itself and listen into some of that low-level stuff. Um, and it's also kind of a pain to uh, do memory forensics at scale, right? We think about the average size of like RAM on most systems these days. All right, like we're almost starting at like 32 gigabytes as a common sort of amount of RAM on even laptops and PCs, right? So long gone are the days that memory and memory forensics is sort of a nice alternative to capturing full disk images, right? Not that they're really comparable, but from a size perspective, right? Memory is really getting up there. And so if you're trying to, collect memory evidence or memory captures from hundreds or thousands of systems across the network, good luck, right? That's going to take a long time. And so we're starting to see now like more innovations, I guess you could say, into more so agents, right? Like it doesn't have to be an EDR agent, but even something that can um, be put on systems relatively lightweight and have all of that processing done on a live system, right? Maybe doing things like enumerating processes or enumerating network connections, stuff that we just sort of did on a live system, or even grab those memory captures and start to work with them on the endpoint. And so you're not sending like gigabytes and thousands of gigabytes of information across the wire back to sort of an analyst. Rather, you're maybe just sending the output, or maybe you're just sending some of that manipulated data back to the endpoint to the analyst for interpretation, right? So there's definitely we need ways to sort of lighten that load. Do you think system administration experience is the best prerequisite for blue team? Good question. Yeah, I actually kind of think so. Um, a lot of areas of blue team, like even if we're just thinking about like more so architecting or engineering and sort of hardening systems, or maybe running doing patches or vulnerability scanning, that kind of side of it, you're basically just a glorified system administrator, right? You're just with more of a focus on security, right? You still need to know how to manage and administrate systems. You need to know sort of, in some cases, the inner workings of those systems or applications to be able to make robust security decisions around them, right? And so my system experience has really, I find, made it a lot easier to just work with a variety of systems or operating systems, applications, and be able to understand a lot of those core components, right? So, for example, knowing things like, the standard Windows processes and what normal looks like, right? A lot of that comes with baselining and experience. And if you have experience working as a system administrator or even just IT work, and you know how things work, like the registry or or processes or network connections and how you can enumerate those. Again, a lot of that basic foundational stuff is the key to being a good analyst, right? And just being able to work with those and collect that information, and then know what abnormal might look like, right? What do you think is the main difference between the hacker mindset versus an instant response mindset, or is the difference in application? Yeah, I think they're a lot similar than a lot of people think, right? Like, and the sort of hacker mindset, enumeration is key, and iteratively sort of going through your attack chain and, trying different things and sort of trying to understand the endpoint and what you're actually running before you just start throwing things at the wall and seeing if it sticks. On the instant response side, again, very uh, iterative process, right? You're not just taking one look through things. You might be documenting and writing things down and correlating that or cross-referencing with another data source, or a lot of pivoting, right? So you find one artifact and you use that against a different data source to see how these scopes sort of can grow, right? If we find a network artifact, hey, what other systems might have contacted this domain or this IP address, right? So again, a lot of that is just you find one thing and then you use that to find other things. And I think there's some correlations there between the sort of hacker mindset too, right? You find one set of credentials, oh, you go try that elsewhere where you were locked out, right? It's kind of like if you think back to like an old Atari game, like you're going through different doors, maybe you eventually find a key, and then you go back and try that key on different doors that you came across that were locked, right? Maybe not the best analogy, but that's sort of what I find. A lot of incident response, more so even a lot of threat hunting, very hypothesis driven, right? So, if you're doing more so structured threat hunting, you know pretty much what you're looking for going in. And so you can pretty quickly determine if what you're looking for is in the evidence or not. That's not the only way to go about threat hunting, but it is sort of the more accessible way. After passing CBTS, I'm taking a bit of a break from studying. Yeah, that's healthy. Been meaning to do some of the free SOC 101 course on YouTube to help my current role. Lots of blue team stuff, so I'm out of element. Yeah, I would say that's a great idea. I find the course is really accessible, right? Especially if you do have experience even on the hacking side or penetration testing side. So I feel like a lot of that will be up your alley. And hopefully will be nice to fill in some gaps here and there and expand out your toolkit on the defensive side and sort of understand what goes into some of that security operations work as well. So yeah, that's cool to see. Definitely a good reminder to not just be studying 24/7. You will burn out. What are you using to analyze the malwares at a free site? In that case, we were using Volatility, which is a free sort of open source Python tool, or I guess a script, for really digging into those memory structures and different process blocks and being able to enumerate that information. So if you just do a Google search for Volatility and then just maybe include GitHub, you should find the Volatility 3 page. There's also Volatility 2, like I was saying earlier. There are some significant differences, but again, there's some plugins that were really useful on Volatility 2 that still haven't been ported over. And so sometimes you'll see folks using both. Track Me now has a SOC simulator also. Yeah, I saw that. I haven't actually played around with it. That seems pretty cool though. A lot of tier 1 or L1 analysts say AI makes their jobs easier, but they're always still very busy. Yeah, that's true. Especially like something a lot about threat hunting, just because it's on my mind with some stuff I'm putting together. So from that aspect, a lot of people, you might see like, oh, why can't we just like point an AI model at our data and sort of, use that to find threats, right? Or even just sort of write detections, especially with threat hunting. Like definitively, like I know the definition can vary widely, but it's a human-centric process by definition, right? So you need analysts with intuition. You need hunters that are actually thinking like the attacker and can actually understand what their environment looks like, right? Their organization and what data they're collecting and what normal looks like in that environment, right? There's some things you can do with AI to make that easier, but it will never be able to do those dispositions itself. It'll never be able to pivot like a real human could do, right? So if you think about it, at the end of the day, and again, this kind of goes back to the M-trend stuff I was talking about. If you look up the latest report from Mandiant, you're going to notice a lot of similarities between earlier years, right? It's like we have a lot of more advanced and sophisticated attackers these days, but a lot of them are still using things that we've seen for years, right? For a long time. And so, and the reason why that is because it's, attackers are humans, right? Attackers aren't AI. Attackers aren't, just pointing a magic AI model and doing their thing, right? They're humans and they have patterns and they have techniques that they've learned over time. If you really think about some of the APT groups, right, it's almost like an assembly line where you have a hacker that comes in every day and is specifically trained to do certain things, and they need to be easily replaceable, right? So it's a very structured kind of thing, believe it or not. And so it's hard to sort of unlearn behaviors or unlearn specific techniques or whatever. And so because of that, as hunters, we are humans hunting other humans. And I think, in my opinion, humans are the best at hunting humans and understanding their behaviors. And so I think AI can be a great tool for that, but it cannot do the job on its own. I don't think it ever can. And that's my hot take. Pen testing is seriously just video games in real life. Yeah, honestly, like I like to think of it as a chess match between attackers and defenders. Like it's it's one move here and sort of a counter move. I don't know. I'm terrible at chess, but that's how I feel. Like a never-ending game of chess between the two. Thank you for the webinars. Will there be a disk investigation session at any point using Forensic Toolkit or the likes? Yeah, that would be awesome. Again, the SOC 101 course, we do quite a bit of that as well. We're going to do a huge deep dive of that in the SOC 201 as well. And so I imagine we'll be able to put together some sort of, if not just a challenge from the course, just like we did here, maybe a sort of bespoke thing that we can do on a webinar like this or a live stream. All right. Just trying to scroll through, see if there's anything else super pressing. I did want to mention that we have a live class next week. So if you did want to take the SOC level 1 live training, which is, again, going to be all of those core skills for, in my opinion, the sort of tier 1, in some cases, tier 2 roles as well. So again, if you did want to go through things like network analysis, phishing analysis, endpoint security, even things like threat intelligence to digital forensics and incident response. So a huge kind of 4-day lecture there or class there. So the link should be going around in chat if you are interested. And if you, again, want to use some of that employer budget for a live class next week, we are getting close to the sort of cutoff for that. So just thought I would mention that's happening next week. But we will also have a live stream next week. I'm not sure who will be on it, but we will have one next Wednesday as well. So with that, thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the little challenge we did today. I thought it was pretty cool. And yeah, I will catch you guys another time. I'm not sure when I'll be on next, but like I said, next week I'll be in the live training. So maybe later in the month. But we will have a stream next week. So take care, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.